There comes a moment in many lives when the familiar interior architecture of thought begins to creak. What once felt solid, identity, certainty, the quiet assumption that reality is roughly what it appears to be, starts to thin, like old plaster cracking under pressure it was never designed to hold. In that moment, the mind often rushes to the nearest explanation it has been taught to fear. Something must be wrong with me. Yet, what if nothing is wrong at all? What if the sensation of disorientation, the subtle or sometimes violent feeling that the self is slipping its seams, is not a malfunction but a transition? What if you are not losing your mind, but your consciousness is breaking its old container? Human consciousness has always lived inside containers. Some are cultural, built from language, religion, and inherited stories about who we are and what the world is for. Others are neurological habits, grooves worn deep by repetition, trauma, survival, and social conditioning. Still others are more intimate, the personal myths we tell ourselves to stay coherent, to wake up in the morning knowing our name, our role, our place in the sequence of things. These containers are not mistakes. They are necessary vessels, like the shell around a seed or the atmosphere around a planet. But containers, by their nature, are meant to be outgrown. When the life inside them expands beyond their capacity, pressure builds. The walls do not shatter all at once. They warp first. They whisper. They leak meaning in strange directions. In our era, this pressure is becoming almost impossible to ignore. The pace of change, technological, ecological, psychological, has accelerated beyond the rhythms our inherited frameworks were built to hold. Information moves faster than interpretation. Identities fragment and recombine in real time. Old authorities dissolve, and new ones fail to solidify. Many people report a strange mix of symptoms: heightened sensitivity, sudden loss of motivation for once meaningful pursuits, a sense of unreality or depersonalization, a hunger for truth paired with an inability to accept simple answers. These experiences are often pathologized, treated as glitches in an otherwise stable system. But what if the system itself is the artifact, and what we are witnessing is not collapse but metamorphosis? Imagine consciousness not as a static thing you possess, but as a living process that evolves through stages, each requiring a different architecture. A child's consciousness needs clear boundaries, simple narratives, and external authority to orient itself. An adolescent consciousness strains against those boundaries, testing them, breaking some, reshaping others. An adult consciousness, at least in its deeper potential, begins to sense that even its most cherished identities are provisional. When this next threshold approaches, the old container begins to feel claustrophobic. Thoughts loop without resolution. Emotions intensify or flatten unpredictably. Time itself may feel distorted, as though the internal clock has lost sync with the external world. The ego, designed to manage a smaller interior universe, starts sending distress signals. This is where fear often enters. Our culture has few shared stories that frame inner upheaval as intelligent or purposeful. Instead, we default to narratives of breakdown. Yet across history, in mystical traditions, philosophical schools, and indigenous cosmologies, there's a recurring recognition that consciousness expands by crisis. The dark night, the desert, the underworld journey. These are not metaphors for failure, but for initiation. They describe a moment when the old map no longer corresponds to the territory, and the psyche must reorganize itself around a larger horizon. From this perspective, confusion is not the enemy of clarity. It is its precursor. The phrase breaking its old container is not meant to imply violence for its own sake. It suggests a natural process, like a river overflowing its banks during a seasonal shift, or a star shedding layers as it moves toward a new phase of fusion. The container breaks because it must, because the life within has outgrown the shape that once protected it. This does not mean the process is comfortable. Growth rarely is. It often feels like loss before it feels like expansion. One may grieve former certainties, former selves, even former ways of loving or believing. But beneath that grief is an intelligence at work, a reconfiguration that cannot be rushed or fully controlled. What makes this moment uniquely challenging is that many people are undergoing this transition simultaneously, without a shared language to hold it. The result can be a collective sense of vertigo. We look outward and see instability everywhere, then look inward and find the same terrain mirrored there. The temptation is to grasp for certainty, to retreat into rigid ideologies or nostalgic identities. Yet those strategies often intensify the pressure, reinforcing containers that are already cracking. Another path exists, quieter and more demanding, to learn how to inhabit the in-between, to recognize that the disorientation itself is meaningful. This exploration is an invitation to reframe your experience, not to romanticize suffering or dismiss the real need for grounding, support, and discernment, but to widen the interpretive lens through which inner change is viewed. When consciousness begins to exceed its old boundaries, it does not announce itself politely. It arrives as restlessness, as existential questioning, as a sense that something vast is pressing from the inside. If you have felt this, you are not alone, and you are not defective. You may be standing at the threshold of a larger interior world, one that requires new metaphors, new practices, and a new relationship with uncertainty itself. In the sections that follow, we will move gradually deeper into this terrain. We will explore the core themes that govern this kind of transformation, the symbolic narratives that help the psyche make sense of it, and the ways such an expansion can be integrated into ordinary life without losing balance or compassion. For now, let it be enough to consider this single possibility, that the discomfort you feel may be evidence not of collapse, but of emergence, not of losing your mind, but of discovering that it was always larger than the container you inherited. At the heart of the experience called breaking the old container lies a quiet but radical realization. Much of what we took to be reality was, in fact, a set of agreements, not false in a trivial sense, not lies concocted to deceive, but shared frameworks that once served an essential function. They organized perception, filtered chaos into meaning, and allowed consciousness to operate efficiently within a narrow bandwidth. The trouble begins when that bandwidth expands. The old agreements still function, but they no longer feel sufficient. They explain too little, exclude too much, and begin to sound hollow when repeated. This is often the first core theme to surface, the distinction between inherited structures and lived truth. Most people grow up inside narratives they did not choose. Stories about success, normality, sanity, and value arrive early and invisibly, encoded in language, education, and reward systems. For a long time, these narratives feel synonymous with reality itself. To question them feels dangerous, even immoral. Yet as consciousness matures, it begins to sense the difference between the map and the terrain. The map once helped you navigate, but now you are standing in landscapes it never anticipated. This realization can feel like betrayal, as though the world promised coherence and delivered ambiguity instead. But ambiguity is not emptiness. It is density without simplification. Another core theme is the loosening of identity. Identity, in its everyday form, is a compression algorithm. It reduces the vastness of lived experience into a manageable self-image, a name, a role, a personality, a story with beginning and a projected end. This compression is useful, even necessary, but it is not the whole truth of what you are. When consciousness begins to exceed the old container, identity starts to flicker. You may notice that traits you once claimed as me feel optional, or that roles you performed effortlessly now require conscious effort. This can be deeply unsettling. The ego interprets it as erosion. Consciousness experiences it as spaciousness. This loosening often coincides with an intensified perception of contradiction. You may find yourself holding opposing truths without feeling the need to collapse them into a single answer. Where once you sought certainty, you now sense complexity. Where once you wanted resolution, you now tolerate open-endedness. This is not indecision. It is a different mode of knowing. The old container relied on binary distinctions to maintain stability, right and wrong, success and failure, sane and insane. As consciousness expands, these binaries soften into spectrums. Meaning becomes contextual rather than absolute. This shift can feel like standing on ground that moves beneath your feet, because the mind was trained to equate firmness with safety. A closely related theme is the reorientation of time. Linear time, with its neat progression from past to future, is another container consciousness uses to stay organized. It allows for planning, memory, and narrative continuity. Yet many people undergoing this transition report changes in their experience of time. The past may feel less definitive, the future less compelling, and the present strangely thick. Moments stretch or compress unpredictably. Old memories resurface not as distant events, but as living textures. This is not merely psychological nostalgia. It reflects a shift in how consciousness relates to causality and meaning. Time becomes less like a line and more like a field, where multiple layers coexist. There is also a theme of heightened sensitivity. As the filters that once narrowed perception begin to relax, more information comes through: emotional, sensory, relational. You may feel more affected by environments, by other people's moods, by global events that once felt abstract. This sensitivity is often misinterpreted as fragility. In truth, it is a sign that the nervous system is recalibrating to process a wider range of data. The challenge is that our social structures are not designed to support this recalibration. Instead of teaching discernment and integration, they often encourage numbing or overstimulation, both of which reinforce the old container. Underlying all these themes is a fundamental tension between control and trust. The old container gave the illusion of control by simplifying reality into predictable patterns. As it breaks, that illusion dissolves and consciousness is invited into a more participatory relationship with the unknown. This does not mean abandoning discernment or responsibility. It means recognizing that not all order is imposed from the top down. Some forms of coherence emerge only when we stop forcing them, when we allow intelligence to arise from relationship rather than command. This can feel like falling, until you realize you are learning to float in a medium that was always there. Perhaps the most misunderstood core theme is the proximity between expansion and breakdown. From the outside, the two can look identical: withdrawal, confusion, loss of motivation, existential questioning. These symptoms appear in both. The difference lies not in the surface experience, but in the underlying trajectory. In a breakdown, energy collapses inward without reorganization. In an expansion, energy disperses temporarily to allow for a new pattern to form. Without context, the expanding consciousness may fear it is failing because it no longer meets the criteria of the old system. But those criteria were designed for a smaller interior world. To recognize these themes is not to master them. Awareness does not instantly resolve the discomfort of transition, but it does provide orientation. It allows you to see your experience not as an isolated anomaly, but as part of a larger pattern of human development, one that has repeated across cultures and epochs under different names. The language may change, the metaphors evolve, but the movement remains. Consciousness presses against its limits, the container strains, and a threshold appears. In the next movement of this exploration, we will step away from abstract themes and enter the realm of symbol and story. We will look at how deeper narratives, myths, dreams, and allegories have always carried this process when ordinary language failed. These symbolic forms do not explain transformation. They enact it, offering images that speak directly to the layers of consciousness undergoing change. When consciousness outgrows its old container, ordinary explanation begins to falter. Logic still functions, but it no longer satisfies. The mind asks questions that analysis alone cannot answer, not because they're irrational, but because they belong to a different register of meaning. This is where symbol enters, not as decoration, but as necessity. Across cultures and eras, humans have turned to story, myth, and allegory when encountering thresholds too vast for straightforward description. These narratives do not tell us what to think. They create interior spaces in which transformation can occur. Consider the recurring image of the traveler who leaves the known world. Whether it appears as Odysseus setting sail, the shaman entering the forest, or the seeker walking into the desert, the structure is remarkably consistent. The traveler does not leave because the known world is evil or broken, but because it has become too small. The familiar rules no longer apply. Old skills fail in new terrain. Along the way, the traveler encounters figures that seem hostile or absurd, monsters, riddles, tricksters. Psychologically, these figures represent aspects of consciousness that were once exiled or compressed by the old container. When the container breaks, they return, not as enemies, but as messengers demanding integration. Another powerful symbolic narrative is that of descent. Many traditions speak of a journey downward before any ascent can occur. In ancient myths, This is the underworld. In spiritual literature, it is the dark night. In modern psychological language, it may appear as depression or existential collapse. Symbolically, descent is not regression. It is the movement of consciousness into layers it previously avoided or could not access. The darkness here is not moral, but epistemic. It is the absence of familiar reference points. The self dissolves into ambiguity, and the ego experiences this as annihilation. Yet in the logic of myth, descent is where hidden resources are found, where lost fragments of the self are retrieved. There is also the image of the vessel itself, the container that must break. Alchemical texts speak of the vase, the sealed container in which transformation occurs under pressure and heat. If the vessel is too rigid, it shatters prematurely. If it is too weak, it leaks before the process completes. Symbolically, the human psyche is both the substance and the container. Consciousness heats itself through experience, contradiction, and longing. When the vessel can no longer hold the pressure, it cracks. What spills out may look like chaos, but in alchemy, this stage is known as nigredo, the blackening, a necessary dissolution before recombination. Dreams often carry these symbols spontaneously during periods of transition. People report dreams of collapsing buildings, flooded houses, or forgotten rooms suddenly revealed behind familiar walls. These are not random images. A house in dreams frequently symbolizes a psyche. A collapsing structure suggests that the old organization of the self is no longer viable. A hidden room indicates latent capacities or perspectives that were previously inaccessible. The dream does not interpret itself in words. It invites the dreamer to feel the shift, to inhabit it viscerally rather than conceptually. Religious and mystical traditions encode similar patterns. The image of death and rebirth appears everywhere, not as literal instruction, but as symbolic shorthand for transformation of identity. The old self must die not because it is wrong, but because it is incomplete. The fear surrounding the symbolic death arises from a mistaken container for the life within it. Consciousness, in these narratives, is not destroyed. It is liberated from a form that can no longer express its full range. Resurrection myths are not promises of immortality in a biological sense. They are testimonies to the continuity of awareness through radical change. One of the most subtle symbolic narratives is that of the mirror. At certain thresholds, consciousness turns back on itself and begins to observe its own processes. This reflexivity can feel disorienting, as though the observer and the observed are collapsing into one another. In mythic terms, this is often represented as a confrontation with a double or shadow. The mirror does not flatter, it reveals. The shadow is not evil. It is a somewhat the old container could not accommodate. Integrating it requires humility, patience, and the willingness to relinquish a simplified self-image. These symbolic narratives serve a crucial function. They reassure the psyche that what feels unprecedented is, in fact, deeply human. You are not inventing this experience. You are reenacting an ancient pattern with modern imagery. The symbols do not remove the difficulty of the process, but they provide companionship. They whisper that others have walked this terrain before, even if their names and languages are forgotten. In this sense, myth is not escapism. It is a technology of orientation, a way of aligning personal experience with transpersonal patterns. Yet, symbols can also be misunderstood. Taken literally, they become dogma. Taken dismissively, they lose their power. Their true function lies in resonance. When a symbol works, it is not because it explains, but because it vibrates at the same frequency as the experience itself. You recognize it not intellectually, but somatically, as a subtle yes in the body. This recognition can be stabilizing during periods when rational frameworks feel insufficient. It offers a different kind of coherence, one that does not rely on certainty, but on depth. As consciousness continues to expand beyond its old container, these symbolic narratives often arise spontaneously through art, fantasy, or unexpected moments of awe. They are not distractions from reality. They are expressions of reality reorganizing itself from within. To engage them is not to abandon reason, but to complement it, allowing multiple modes of knowing to coexist. In the next section, we will turn toward the question that inevitably follows. How does one live this transformation without becoming ungrounded? How do these vast, symbolic shifts translate into daily choices, relationships, and responsibilities. The breaking of the container is not an escape from the world, but a re-entry into it under new terms. After the container cracks and the symbolic language has done its quiet work, a more immediate question emerges, often without ceremony. How does one live like this? It is one thing to recognize that consciousness is expanding, quite another to wake up on a Tuesday morning and meet the ordinary demands of work, relationships, and survival with a psyche that no longer fits its old grooves. This is where integration becomes essential, not as a technique to fix the experience, but as a way of allowing a larger interior world to move through everyday life without tearing it apart. Integration begins with pacing. One of the most common missteps during periods of expansion is the attempt to leap too far, too fast, as though insight itself demands immediate external transformation. Quitting everything, severing relationships, rejecting all prior structures. These impulses often arise from a genuine perception that the old life no longer aligns with inner truth. Yet consciousness, like any living system, requires rhythm. Expansion that outpaces the nervous system's capacity to stabilize can tip into fragmentation. Practical integration honors the fact that growth does not negate continuity. It reorganizes it gradually. This pacing often shows up in the simplest domains first. Sleep, nourishment, movement, and silence become more than lifestyle choices. They become anchoring forces. As perception widens, the body becomes a crucial reference point, a living reminder that consciousness is not meant to float untethered. Many people find that their relationship to their body changes during this phase. Sensations feel more immediate, more communicative. Fatigue carries information. Tension reveals where outdated patterns are still being enforced. Listening to these signals is not regression into instinct. It is collaboration with a deeper intelligence that precedes conceptual thought. Relationships, too, begin to reorganize. As identity loosens, relational dynamics based on fixed roles may feel strained. You may notice that certain conversations repeat themselves mechanically, while others suddenly deepen or fall silent altogether. This is not a failure of connection, but a signal that the relational container is also shifting. Integration here does not require dramatic confrontation or withdrawal. Often it involves learning to speak from a place of honesty without over-explaining, to allow some connections to evolve naturally rather than forcing them to conform to who you used to be. Boundaries may need to become more fluid in some places and firmer in others, guided not by ideology but by felt resonance. Work and purpose often undergo a particularly intense reevaluation. Many people discover that motivations driven by status, fear, or external validation lose their charge. This can produce a period of disorientation, even grief, as familiar ambitions dissolve before new ones have fully formed. Practical integration does not demand that you immediately replace old goals with grand, spiritually aligned missions. More often, it asks for patience with the not knowing. Purpose at this stage is less about destination and more about orientation. It is expressed in the quality of attention you bring to what is in front of you, rather than in the scale of what you produce. Emotionally, integration involves learning to tolerate a wider spectrum without collapsing into it. As the old container breaks, emotions may arise with greater intensity and nuance. Joy can feel expansive and uncontained. Sorrow can feel ancient, as though it does not belong solely to your personal history. The temptation is to either suppress these waves or drown in them. Integration offers a third path, presence without fusion. This means allowing emotions to move through awareness without immediately constructing narratives around them. In doing so, feeling becomes information rather than identity. A subtle but powerful implication of this process is a shift in how certainty is valued. Practical life often demands decisions, plans, and commitments. Yet integration teaches that not all clarity arrives in advance. Some clarity emerges only through action, through small experiments that test alignment rather than guarantee outcomes. Trust replaces prediction as the primary organizing principle. This trust is not naive optimism. It is an earned confidence in the capacity of consciousness to self-correct, to learn from missteps, and to reorient when necessary. Community plays a crucial role here, though not always in obvious ways. During expansion, the desire for resonance intensifies. Being understood becomes less about agreement and more about shared depth. Even a single relationship in which you can speak, without translating your inner experience into socially acceptable fragments can be stabilizing. At the same time, it becomes important to discern when to seek companionship and when to cultivate solitude. Integration is not a constant dialogue. It also requires quiet spaces where new patterns can settle without interference. Perhaps the most grounded implication of all is ethical. As consciousness expands, the sense of separation between self and world often diminishes. Actions feel less isolated, more consequential. Harm, even when indirect, registers more clearly. Compassion arises not as a moral obligation, but as a natural response to perceived interconnection. Integration here does not mean becoming perfect or passive. It means acting with increased sensitivity to context, impact, and unintended consequences, recognizing that responsibility grows alongside awareness. Living with a larger interior world does not exempt you from ordinary struggles. Bills still need to be paid. Conflicts still arise. Bodies still age. What changes is a relationship to these facts. They are no longer interpreted as evidence that transformation has failed, but as a terrain through which it expresses itself. The extraordinary does not replace the ordinary. It permeates it. In the final section, we will gather these threads and return to beginning with new eyes. We will speak not of containers breaking, but of what becomes possible when consciousness learns to move freely without losing its grounding. The journey does not end in transcendence alone, but in participation, awake, embodied, and responsive. At the end of this exploration, it becomes clear that what initially felt like a fracture was never about loss at all. The breaking of the old container was not an act of destruction, but a revelation of scale. Consciousness did not suddenly become something new. It revealed how much it had already grown beyond the forms that once held it. The fear arose because identity mistook the container for the life within it, because the mind was trained to equate familiarity with safety. Yet safety, in its deepest sense, has never come from rigidity. It has come from adaptability, from the quiet intelligence that knows how to reorganize itself when conditions change. To say, "You're not losing your mind," is not a dismissal of difficulty. It is an invitation to reframe difficulty as meaningful. Confusion, disorientation, and even grief are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signs that something larger is trying to come into coherence. When the old architecture collapses, there is a moment when nothing seems to hold. But this moment is not emptiness. It is spaciousness before form, the same pause that exists between breaths, between heartbeats, between one way of being and the next. The transformational call here is subtle, not dramatic. It does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to become more honest about the size of your interior world. It asks you to stop forcing yourself back into shapes that no longer fit simply because they're familiar or socially rewarded. This honesty requires courage, not the loud kind, but the quiet willingness to stay present when certainty dissolves. It requires patience with ambiguity and compassion for the parts of you that still cling to old identities for protection. Transformation, in this sense, is not about arrival. There is no final, perfected state waiting on the other side of expansion. Consciousness does not graduate from change. It deepens into it. Each container that breaks reveals another horizon, another layer of complexity and connection. The invitation is not to chase these horizons compulsively, but to inhabit each threshold fully, allowing insight to translate into embodiment rather than abstraction. One of the most important shifts that occurs at this stage is the realization that you are not required to explain yourself constantly. Not every interchange needs to be justified, named, or shared. Some transformations are gestational. They need privacy, silence, and time. Learning when to speak and when to remain quiet becomes an act of self-respect. You begin to sense that your life is not a performance of coherence for others, but an ongoing dialogue between awareness and experience. There is also a deeper responsibility that comes with this expansion. As consciousness grows, so does influence. Your presence affects systems, relationships, and environments in ways that may not be immediately visible. This is not a burden meant to induce guilt. It is a reminder of participation. You are not an isolated observer of a broken world. You are a node in a living network, and the way you relate to your own interchange subtly shapes the field around you. Integration, therefore, is not just personal hygiene. It is a form of stewardship, If there's a single orientation to carry forward, it is this: become the space that can hold your own becoming. Instead of trying to immediately define who you are now, practice noticing how you are changing. Instead of demanding certainty, cultivate discernment. Instead of collapsing into fear when the old structures fall away, ask what new capacities are being invited to emerge. This does not mean romanticizing pain or bypassing the need for support. It means trusting that consciousness, when met with curiosity rather than resistance, tends toward coherence. You may still have days when the world feels unreal, when motivation wanes, when old reference points fail to return. On those days, remember that stability does not always feel like solidity. Sometimes it feels like balance on moving ground, like learning to surf rather than building a dam. The skill is not in stopping the waves, but in adjusting your stance again and again with humility and attention. The old container broke because it had done its job. It carried you to the edge of its usefulness. Honoring it does not mean rebuilding it. It means acknowledging what it allowed you become. The next phase does not require a new rigid structure, but a more flexible relationship with structure itself. You begin to understand that form is provisional, that identity is a tool rather than a prison, and that meaning is something you participate in, not something you inherit fully formed. In this way, the transformation is not an escape from ordinary life, but a deeper entry into it. You return to the world less armored, more responsive, more aware of nuance and consequence. You may not have clearer answers, but you have better questions. You may not feel in control, but you feel involved. And in that involvement, a different kind of sanity emerges, one that does not depend on denying complexity, but on learning how to live inside it without shrinking. If you take anything from this journey, let it be this reassurance. The ground beneath you is not disappearing. It is widening. What feels like the loss of structure is the gain of dimension. You are not losing your mind. You are discovering that it was never meant to be confined to a single container, and that the breaking you feared may be the opening to which a more truthful, compassionate, and spacious way of being finally learns to breathe.